Hello and welcome to today's video. Today's video is 11 tips for street photography. Before we get into the 11 tips, though, we should probably do an overview of what street photography is all about, some of the definitions, a little bit of the legal law stuff around it, some of the ethics, and then we'll get into the tips. And then at the end, I will include some photos from a recent photo walk last week in downtown Bellevue, Washington. And I'll talk a little bit about each photo. So that's the scoop for the video. Are you ready to get your street photography tips on? Here we go. So let's talk a little bit about what street photography is. There's tons of definitions of it. I think my definition is street photography is like landscape photography. I kind of call it cityscapes. Just like in landscape photography, there's lots of different subgenres. There's lots of different ways to express landscape photography. There's lots of different ways to approach and do city photography, street photography. My preference personally is to think of it along the lines of stories, think of it along the lines of observational type photography. So I don't have a plan usually when I go in and practice street photography. I just go and walk around and see what happens. Lots of different ways to approach street photography. There's lots of different definitions of what it is. Make it yours. That's what all of art is about, is owning it and making it uniquely you. So let's talk a teeny bit about the law around street photography. And I must say up front, as you might know, I am not an attorney, not even close, although I took 2 business law classes in college. But anyway, my understanding of the law in the US, in the United States, so your mileage may vary in your country, is when a person's in public, they no longer have what's called a reasonable expectation of privacy. That means you can see them, and if you can see them, you can record them. That's the law. I like to practice a policy of just because you can doesn't mean you should. So I'm legally free to do certain things, but doesn't mean I should do certain things. So even though you're allowed to take someone's photo in public in the US for non-commercial purposes, that means you're not getting paid, then you do not need their permission to use that photo. So, yeah, be respectful. That's going to be tip number 2. Yeah, I'll talk a little bit more about that in that tip, but be aware of how you feel about it, how other people might feel about you pointing a camera at them. I tend to be very shy about taking someone else's photo. If I can do it without them noticing me, that's my preference. Some street photographers are very confrontational and enjoy that. It's not my style. So, but find a way that works for you. Be aware of the law. Be aware of how what you do affects other human beings. Please, please, please be aware of that. You have a responsibility to use your powers for good. So anyway, yeah, so that's the law, my understanding of it in the US. Again, other countries may be different. You may not be allowed to take someone's photo unless you have their explicit permission. So do check that locally. However, there's lots of ways to do street photography that don't involve people's faces or identifiable people that still include people. I'll show you some of those coming up. So yeah, use good common sense, use judgment, be ethical. Don't do something, take someone's photo if you wouldn't want them taking a photo of you in that situation. Try and be empathetic. Yeah, so that's my understanding of what street photography is, a little bit about the law and the ethics. Let's move on to the tips. And tip number 1 is to be safe. So what do I mean by that? Be safe emotionally, be safe physically. Everybody has a different level of anxiousness or feeling of nervousness when they approach new situations, new locations. I've lived in suburbia all my life, so cities are exotic to me. I live near Seattle. I'm about 25 miles due east of Seattle, excuse me. So I've been there. I'm fairly comfortable there. There's certain parts where I'm not comfortable, but there's a trail a mile from my house that I'm not comfortable out in nature where there's no one because there's bears around. So, yeah. So be safe. If you're uncomfortable at all, bring someone with you, bring a companion, let someone know where you're going, have a photo buddy. Be smart and be safe. So that's tip number 1. Tip number 2 is to be respectful. Be respectful. That means both of property and of people. So if you're pointing a camera at someone and they notice you and they put on the angry face, put the camera down. With kids, other people's kids, just don't. That's my suggestion. There's so much opportunity for misunderstanding and anger. It's not worth it. I don't care how cute whatever the kid is doing is. My suggestion is don't. There are lots of other photos out there. So be respectful of buildings. There's a building in downtown Bellevue that if you're on the sidewalk right outside, the security guard will come out and ask you not to take photos of the building. I don't understand how they can do that, but just respect it. It's not worth the fight. Walk across the street to the sidewalk across the street, and you can still see the building and take photos. Yeah. So that's tip number 2, be respectful. Tip number 3. Tip number 3 is that bigger isn't necessarily always better. By that, I mean a larger city. I prefer to go to Bellevue, which is both closer for me, and there's free parking still available. I know where the donut places are, and it's mostly flat, so that helps too. Seattle is huge and has lots of opportunities for photos and some really cool older buildings that I like. But if you go east to west, you're going up and down hills. North to south is pretty flat. So yeah, just pay attention to what you want to do. But I like Bellevue. It's a nice size. It's easily walkable in an hour or two with a good chunk of the downtown core. And again, for me, the free parking and donuts at the end, good stuff. So find a place where, if it feels good to you. And everybody will have different preferences. Number 4 tip is to be comfortable. Comfortable shoes are going to be important because you're going to be walking around. Clothing that is comfortable. Don't bring your whole camera bag. For me, I usually bring one camera with a zoom lens. And maybe there's 2 or 3 other lenses in my bag. But the last time I went out, I did have my bag. I had a small bag. Just a sling bag. I did have 2 other lenses in it, but I only used the one. Again, just walking around. You don't need to advertise what you're doing necessarily. So that's part of being safe. Just personal safety. Be aware of that. Be comfortable. Dress warm. Along those lines, around advertising, hey, I've got a camera and all that. In the summer when I wear cargo shorts, because I'm a dad, I've been known to put like prime lenses in my cargo short pockets, so it's I don't have to even bring a bag. And in the winter, I'll just put them in my coat pocket. So yeah, you don't even necessarily need a bag. I would not recommend bringing a tripod. The times I've brought it, I've never used it. And it's just one more thing that says, "Hi, I'm a photographer. Notice me noticing you." Number 5, pay attention to the weather. Incorporate the weather, what it's doing, into whatever your street photography for the day might be. Around here in the Seattle area, we get lots of overcast days. I love those because it makes the sky basically turn white. And I'll show some example photos of that at the end. I really like that high contrast, dramatic. It almost looks like you took it in a studio on a white background, but it's just the sky. Blue sky days are fun. Bright, sunny days are fun too in their own way. You're going to get more dramatic shadows, more dramatic and contrasty light. So just adjust your expectations of the day depending on the weather. If you can plan around a foggy morning with high rises, that's pretty cool where they disappear into the sky. Rain can be cool with reflections and puddles. Just incorporate the weather into, again, your expectations for the day and your choice of subjects for the day. And then number six, go back multiple times. The first time you walk around a place, it's going to be overwhelming. You're going to see maybe the big things and not the small things. You won't see themes necessarily. You'll just see everything. So I usually walk around Bellevue probably 3 or 4, maybe more times a year. Especially right now in the U.S. West, there's so much construction going on that every time you go back, it's going to be different. And if there's buildings you love that might be torn down, go get some photos of them now. So also pay attention, go at different times of day. It's kind of sub tip to this. I want to go at night to Bellevue. Things look different under the glow of lights. As well as there's going to be less people around. Be aware of the rhythms. Weekends in downtown areas, city areas are usually very, very quiet, so you won't have many people opportunities. And at least in my area, you still have donuts, but not Starbucks. Anyway, I don't drink coffee, so I'm okay with that. Number seven is pay attention to what you pay attention to. Notice what you're noticing. If you see, like for example, I'm going to show a worker standing in front of a sign who's wearing the thing that shows what you're supposed to wear. So I saw that later on in the day too. It's like when you notice something and then you notice multiples of something. So think of themes, think of stories you can tell. Think of repeating things you notice. Another thing I noticed was people taking breaks. In a couple different areas. So I have a sequence, I think, of 3 photos of people taking breaks. So pay attention to what you pay attention to. Number eight is to walk slowly. You'll still get some exercise in, but don't rush. Slow down, look around, look up, look down. Give yourself time to soak it in. Most of the time I do an hour and a half to 2 hours, take a break, and sometimes I continue, but oftentimes I go home. Yeah, so walk slowly. It's not a race. Enjoy it. Yeah, soak it all in. Number nine is to reverse your path. So if you walk down, let's say you walk north on one side of the street, walk south on the other side of the street. So you'll notice things from a different side of the street in a different direction. The light will be hitting it differently, interacting with things differently. You'll be closer to one thing than another. But yeah, it's different when you walk the other direction. And if you're not going to walk the other direction, at least occasionally turn around and see what's behind you that you've already walked past, but now it looks different from the other direction. That's just a good photography tip in general. Look around. Number 10, let me get my hands in here, sorry. Number 10 is to stop and wait. There are certain places in most city situations where stuff is going to happen. For example, I was watching. There was this huge crane lifting stuff up onto. It was probably a 20-story building. It was a huge crane in the middle of the street, and I was watching to see if anything was going to happen. Not much did, but it was interesting to watch. Regardless, the process. Later on, I was watching near a very busy construction site and looking around and watching and waiting, and found one photo of a welder up on about the 5th floor, just leaning against. He was welding and leaning out over open space. So it was just trippy to me. Yeah, so wait, slow down, watch what's happening. Watch for maybe people intersecting with light in an interesting way. For example, I mentioned I was watching a sign and then someone walked in front of it wearing the outfit that was in the sign of what they're supposed to wear. So those kind of neat moments. So you might just stop and wait. How long? Long enough. And come back if you need to. Come back. I tend to be impatient and probably miss some things. So if you think you've waited long enough, wait a little longer. And then tip number 11 is to know your camera exposure controls and other controls. The reason I say that is in street photography, especially cities with tall buildings, you'll oftentimes walk you're in a canyon of shadow, but sometimes the sun will come through, so you got to be able to quickly adjust exposure, quickly adjust your aperture if you want to control how much is in focus, adjust your shutter speed if you want blurry motion or sharp photos. Also want to know probably about whether you need continuous autofocus or single autofocus, as well as one more would be whether you're going to take a sequence of photos or just a single photo with a click. If you're doing a sequence, so there's some action happening, you might find helpful to do a burst of photos, and that would be in most cameras in the drive mode setting. So know all about how those things work. So those are some tips, suggestions for ways you can approach street photography, things to think about to help you hopefully create more interesting photos, feel successful, have fun, and be safe. So I hope you like that. If you have your own tips, please add them to the comments below and let's get a conversation going about that. That would be swell. What we're going to do next is we're going to take a look at some photos I grabbed last week when I was in downtown Bellevue on an overcast day. So we'll get started on those, and I'll just tell a little bit of story and what I was thinking and how they relate to these tips. So here's photo number 1. I would say this goes with the tip for pay attention to what you pay attention to. Knowing your camera controls. I missed focus here a little bit. I was wide open at f4, and I wish the sign was also in focus. I was kind of had to be quick. I was about 3 feet from this guy, wide angle shot, and I just wanted to grab a quick shot of him in front of the sign that he's imitating. So it was kind of neat. Next photo in the sequence is this one. Again, pay attention to what you pay attention to. In this case, I didn't have his permission to take this photo, and I do run ads on this, so there's, I guess, a commercial component to this, so I've hidden this guy's face out of respect for that. Yeah, but here's another guy who's wearing the sign, basically, when the sign comes to life. I love the yellows. It was so bold. I had to be quick on this. I just saw him walking, and I didn't want to necessarily wait, even though I told you in tip number 10 to wait. Yeah, I think it was number 10. Anyway, so this is another example of be respectful. In this photo, when I was walking, he didn't see me. This worker, I think he was just taking his hat off, but it looks like he's kind of holding his head together. He's taking a break and holding his head together. Here's the next photo. Out of respect, I've hidden his face, but he saw me. He saw me, so I just quickly put the camera down and walked a little further on. People tend to notice. We have a sense of when people are looking at us, especially if you've got one of these in front of you. People will tend to notice that. And if it feels uncomfortable, don't do it. If you don't want to include people at all in your street photography, that's totally cool. If you can, in a respectful and safe and comfortable manner for all involved, it does add a layer of interest that sometimes is missing. We're just drawn to photos with people in it because there's an extra layer of story. Break time. I got a series of folks taking a break. This lady, I really like photos like this where you can know enough about the story, but you don't have to see the whole person. So you just see, I think it's a lady, if I remember correctly, sitting cross-legged in this little alcove where all these pipes are on a smoke break, checking her phone. Yeah, it's kind of cool. I really like the and I processed it a little on the grittier side to emphasize the alley that this was in. Here's that welder I mentioned. So this is an example of stop and look around. There was so much going on at this construction site. There was a lot. So just paying attention to it, noticing it, and then finding the photos somewhat in the midst of the busyness and chaos. Yeah, job number whatever I would not like. Oh, the heights just get me. I know he's strapped in, but it still gets me. For me, one of the things I enjoy in city photography, cityscape kind of thing, is looking for patterns, looking for kind of abstract things. So this is just a little to the left of this guy, the previous photo, the corrugated ceiling and the safety flags there on the bare welded metal. Another building, similar to diagonals. Again, if you can find what you're paying attention to, mimic it with different things, you kind of create a sequence, a story. This is one of my favorite buildings to photograph, and I just noticed they're going to be tearing it down before too long. It's an old kind of mid-century building with some cool details of the windows on the other side. So I'll have to go back and create some photos before it's gone. Again, our white skies days give us this kind of look with buildings. I like a lot of empty space, white space. Your street photography may lend itself to that or not, depending on your location. Downtown Bellevue is getting crowded, but there's still opportunities for kind of solo building portraits. Or get a wide angle shot with include 3 buildings, just some tips of stuff here. I kind of like the triangles and the X and again, the empty space, kind of minimalist. Pay attention to what you pay attention to. This is another example of wait, stop and slow down. There's a sculpture in this residential area. There's a kind of this green space between. It's a public thoroughfare, but it has this metal sculpture. So I was looking through that. It was just kind of artsy, and then noticed some people started walking by. So I captured this gentleman walking to wherever he was going, and yeah, just a single click. I prefer street photography where people are anonymous and representative or symbolic rather than specific. That's my preference, because then it opens it up to being interpreted more broadly than, hey, that's my cousin Vinny. While you're doing street photography, depending on where you live, don't forget to look for, the natural elements. Bellevue has a few trees. This is just in that same little green space in the previous photo. Go ahead and do a close-up, do some nature photography while you're in the midst of the city. All these photos that I've just shown you were taken with the 16 to 80 Fuji zoom lens on my X-T3. So there you have it, some tips about street photography, 11 of them to be exact, some thoughts and my experiences. Obviously, all this stuff is very personal, and what you like and enjoy may be different than what I enjoy or the way you do it. If you have some suggestions or experiences or photos you want to share, leave a comment below. That'd be great. If you've enjoyed this video, I would really appreciate it if you give it the like. That helps trains the YouTube algorithm about quality videos that you enjoy. And then if you would subscribe to this channel, that's also a big help in so many ways. But comments are greatly appreciated. They're conversations I've had on this channel have been fun so far, and I would welcome and invite you to participate in that as well. So there you go, another video. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you get an opportunity to go create some street photos. Share some links below if you have your photos. That would be wonderful. So until we meet again on this lovely YouTube channel, I hope you are safe and stay well and stay healthy. And I look forward to seeing you again next time. So bye for now.